Welcome to Lead Different.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different?
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. Today, we've got an outstanding guest, a gentleman whom I met this summer at the Colby training in Chicago, Illinois. Adam Bliss, who is the owner and chief vision officer of Right at Home of Southern Arizona and Southern Nevada. After spending almost 2 decades working for large consumer packaged goods manufacturers and retail consulting firms, Adam found the courage to become an entrepreneur and started a business. He left his job in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and moved back to Tucson, Arizona to begin an in-home senior care agency with his wife, Cola. That experience both tested his mettle and created an opportunity for growth that never would have come in any other way. Adam credits this decision as one of the 3 most important of his entire life. So we already have that why not moment from Adam that we're going to definitely spend some time on. The other thing I want to make sure I let you guys know before we bring Adam on is the Lead Different podcast needs your help. We're growing very fast, but make sure if you're getting some value out of the podcast, make sure you take a moment right now, pause the recording and go hit the bell. Make sure you follow us. Make sure you comment. If you get something out of today's podcast, let Adam know, let me know, so that we know that you're listening, and let your friends know about the Lead Different podcast. We interview leaders every single week, and we want to bring topics to you that are important. So let us know what you're looking for. Without any further ado, let me introduce our good friend, Adam Bliss. Adam, how are you?
I'm great, Dan. Good morning. Thanks for inviting me to be part of the podcast.
Well, good morning, and thank you for being here. It has been a pleasure to get to know you, Adam. As I mentioned in the introduction, we met at Colby Training in Chicago this past summer. And, one of the things I appreciate about you is you've remained in contact. You're obviously very busy. You're running a very busy business, and you're implementing the training you received at ColbyCon into your companies, into your different facilities with your teams. But you take the time to say hello every once in a while, send a comment, and that is very valuable. And that puts you in the top 1% for me, because all of us are busy, but very few of us can take the time to stay in touch with those people we've just met. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing the same. And I think, we met, like you said, in Chicago at something that was of common interest. And I just saw the work that you were doing, and it really resonated with me, because this has always been a passion for me. And to see when people are really delivering an impact, changing people's lives. And I think that's what you're doing, right? And that's what you're striving to do, and the passion that you bring to it. And so I love the podcast. I love the LinkedIn posts. And I love just being able to have that little bit of inspiration from a great source like you.
Well, we appreciate that, Adam. I've had some great guests on the show, thankfully, through our connections, our mutual connections. And one of the things that's really interesting to me, as I read in the intro, you were in a comfortable career where you were doing really well. And you mentioned that making the decision to become an entrepreneur and start your own business one of the three most important decisions of your life. That's what we call it, why not leadership, a why not moment, a time when you
Right.
said, why not do it? Because, we believe that we only live once, and you get one shot at this thing, right? And you made a decision that was important, that was impactful, and it has made a difference in your life. Tell us about that decision. What led to the decision? Big decision, not only in terms of career change, but also location change. So you left the comfortable, beautiful winters in Minnesota to
Yeah.
to 60,
Right.
70-degree winters in Arizona. I'm sure
Yeah.
that's the part you don't miss. But tell us what led to that decision and how it's turned out.
I'll tell you, I had always had this desire to be an entrepreneur. And yet, frankly, if I'm really honest with myself, I, I was afraid, and I never took the leap. And there was always some reason, some excuse for not doing it. Oh, what would I do? What am I good enough? Do I know enough? Do I have enough experience? Could I succeed? But what if I don't succeed? And so, I had a nice career. I worked for some great companies and did some really good things and succeeded along the way and was rewarded for that. And yet there was over and over again this sense of not being completely fulfilled. And I just realized that, if I never took the leap, that I would look back and go, gosh, that's what I regret. And I felt like I could have more impact if I could finally get the courage to do what I needed to do. And so, it's like Dan Sullivan talks about. We can look for that confidence all day long, but until we have the courage to step forward, we won't develop the confidence. And so my wife had, because she wanted to do something to give back a little bit in the community and wanted to get out of those, the house on those cold winter days and just do something part-time. She became a caregiver part-time, taking care of older adults in Minnesota while we lived there. And she said, man, I love what I'm doing and I love making a difference for people. And, it was like $10 an hour and 20 hours a week, something like that. And yet every morning she got up and she was so excited to just go take care of people. And I got to thinking, I'm like, that's really interesting because you're having an impact and it could be an interesting business model. And I wonder if that's something that we could do. And she, of course, said, well, I don't know about that, but I just love helping people. And so it wasn't too long later that I actually saw on a Southwest Airlines flight, back when they had the magazines and the seat back pockets, an advertisement to, targeted towards people to become franchisees for the Right at Home system. And I thought, that's where my wife works, and so I brought that home. I showed her. I said, I think we're going to do this. And so it wasn't too long after that I met with her boss, who was the local franchise owner in Minneapolis, Paul Blom, and really an inspiring person and the passion that he brought to it. I met with the folks at Right at Home, and we made a decision that we were going to do this. And of course, then all the things that had to happen. We had to leave Minnesota. We had to move back to Arizona, where we wanted to reestablish ourselves for pretty much the rest of our lives. And we had to figure out, how to start a business and how to, get clients and how to hire employees and how to do all these different things that I'd never done before. But choosing to do that was emotionally, spiritually, financially, like I said, one of the best things I've ever chosen to do.
That's fantastic. And I love, how things lined up, right? And I think you have to be looking for those opportunities. Bronnie Ware wrote a great book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Mhm.
And we adopted that at Why Not Leadership, because we know that at the end of our life, we don't regret the things we did. We regret the things we didn't do.
Mhm.
And I think you asked yourself that question and you said, hey, I don't want to get to that end of life and say, I wish I'd have taken that chance. So then you see the ad in the Southwest Airlines flight. Your
Yeah,
wife is
yeah.
actually working at Right at Home in Minneapolis, and
Yeah.
So you have access to the franchise owner, and you have access to more information, which is something you need. And we'll talk about that too, because we
Yeah.
know that when it comes to the Colby, which is the training you and I took together, you're a high fact finder. And when
Yeah.
you took the YOS, which a lot of the people who are listening are familiar with the YOS discovery, we discover your why, how, and what. You have two of the highest fact finding whys in your top three. So your why is make sense, your how is mastery, which means you like to dig deep and learn things at a deep level, and your what is clarify, which means you clarify things. You thrive in clarity, so you ask questions. So having access to that franchise owner, I'm sure was a blessing, because you could ask him all the questions you had, so that you felt comfortable, so that it could all make sense to you. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think when I look at your success in the world that you lived in before, and probably in the world that you're living in now, probably has a lot to do with the fact that you're a great fact finder, and you get the information necessary to make really good decisions, and you're clear. So tell us how. I would love to hear your thoughts on the YOS results,
Mhm.
and then how that has impacted you in your life, just knowing it, but also looking back where that has come into play.
Yeah, it's really fascinating for me because when I did the YOS, and I saw the result, I went, "Yep, that's me. That is so precisely how I operate and where I find strength and confidence in approaching problems, challenges, and opportunities in my life." And so, yeah, I really am, I think. Uh, Skilled at taking the complex and making it simple, and being able to have a really clear understanding of what is it that we want to accomplish and how do we want to accomplish it, and taking and sort of synthesizing a large amount of complex pieces of data and filtering out the things that don't really matter. And so oftentimes people in a like that Colby fact finder, they can really get stress themselves out with sort of uh, paralysis by analysis, and I can do that, but most of the time I think because of what I'm seeing here in my why, I'm able to make sense of that, and put it into places and into buckets, um, and do something with it rather than just have a bunch of data. And so that's what I found is really powerful. And so I remember one time, uh, right after being a recent college grad, I had a job at a healthcare firm in Tempe, Arizona, and I was hired in to write systems documentation. It was a boring job, right? But I'd had an English degree, and they hired me to write technical documentation for software they developed internally. But what I actually found was the programming staff, they really didn't get the business needs of a lot of the end
Right.
users. And a lot of the end users were frustrated with the IT department because, like, why can't the programmers just make this button work the way I want it to work? And
Right.
I found my strength was um, in going, hey, what is it that you need? And I could explain that to the technical staff, and I could go
Right.
back from the technical staff and say, hey, end users, here's the technical requirements in order for that to happen. Does this work? Does that work? And I could
Yeah.
I could sort of be that filter for the two. And I think that's when I really started to discover that, hey, making sense of things, putting things together, translating, that was really a superpower for me. And it really
Right.
paid dividends for me throughout my entire career and starting a business.
Yeah, when I looked at your results, Adam, and they're genius results, and of course, as I say that, just like Colby tells us, what great results you have. Well, with the YOS, there's no bad results, but when I looked at and what you explained really brings it to life. Your ability to make sense of things is really good. I share that why with you. It's my what. But one of the challenges that makes sense people have sometimes is that they're quick to make decisions, and they can take all that information and it makes sense to them, and then they move forward. So when you're the leader, and
Right.
for me it was in the military, when things would make sense to me. I was ready to move forward. And if you're not careful, you're moving forward and everybody behind you is saying, wait, what are we doing? And now you find yourself alone on the battlefield because it made sense to you, but you didn't take the time to explain it to them. With you having the what of clarify, I think you probably have a natural gift to say, hey guys, does that make sense? And making sure you ask questions so that the people that are following you aren't saying, hey, Adam's off on his own. He's doing his own thing. We don't know what he's doing. But I'm sure that you've grown into it. Maybe Sharon, have you had an example where something made sense to you, you made a decision and you're moving forward and everybody on the team is going, what the heck is he doing? And then a time where you took the time to clarify it.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing is that it does take some growing into. I think that's the term you used. And while I'm good at clarifying, I have to do it consciously because I can really easily get caught up in my speed of thought, my speed of action, and it's not that other people can't keep up. It's just they're operating in a different way, right? They've got a different why, and they've got a different what, and so for them, and for me, for us to have that connection and go together, I have to pause. I have to consciously pause, look around the room, and say, are we aligned? Does this, make sense to you as well? And allow people an opportunity to ask questions. And so the people that I know really well, I can understand like, hey, I know I'm going to need to share this in a different way or provide additional information to this person to help them come along with me so that we can go at the same speed and accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And I mean, just recently in a weekly leadership team meeting. We meet every week for 90 minutes as a leadership team. Most of that time we're spending identifying, discussing and solving issues, in our EOS operating system model.
Right.
And I oftentimes, have to just remind myself, don't speak, right? I can see a path, I can see an answer, but I need to hear from everyone else, right? I need them to own it. This is theirs as much as it is mine. And so, and sometimes they're hesitant, not so much anymore. Oftentimes now I get responses like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And I'm like, you just told your boss we're not doing what he wants to do. And I love that, because that means you get it and you're engaged. But in the past, oftentimes people, I bring a problem to the table and I could see options and ideas, but I didn't know if they were the right ones. And so I would ask for input and it would be, that proverbial crickets. And so I took to saying, look, guys, if you're not willing to share ideas and help me with this, then we're just going to have to go with my idea because that's the only one we have. And I'm not sure it's the best one. So I really need your help to engage and share that feedback, give me your ideas, and let's work through it together. And I've often found that where I started, even though I had things made sense and I was pretty clear, it wasn't the best option yet until I had the input of the other people on the team. And so that's been something I've learned, and that magic happens when I'm able to do that.
Love that. Thank you. That is a beautiful example. And there's so much in there, Adam, that I want to make sure we talk about. Number one, you bring up a point that whenever I coach anybody with the why of make sense, I always remind them of the fact that it doesn't mean you're smarter than everybody. We're all intelligent in our own way. But your processor runs faster than everybody else's. Right? When you have the why it makes sense, you process information faster than everybody else. Will everybody get there? Eventually they will. They just run at a slower speed. And so what you mentioned is perfect. You give people time to process because you've got the answer. It's at the tip of your tongue. And to hold yourself back takes discipline to not say, hey, this is what I think we should do. The other thing that is, I think, is a great leadership trait is giving people the psychological safety to be able to say, no, we're not doing that. And when you surround yourself with the complementary staff that as EOS asks you to do and Colby helps you do and YOS does too, making sure that, if you're a high fact finder, you position, you put people around you that are going to help you make decisions faster. When you're the person that makes decisions fast, you put people around you that are going to slow you down and make sure you don't make bad decisions. But once you've got those people in place, giving them the power to say, no, Adam, we're not going to do that because X, Y, and Z. It takes some time to build. What's the key that you think moved you? And I like the kind of short speech you gave where you said, guys, if you don't give me feedback, I'm going to go with my decision, and my idea may not be the best idea. So it takes a little bit of humility on your part to say, hey, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. That's why I hired you guys. But what does it take to build a culture where people feel comfortable saying, hey, no, Adam, we're not doing that, and know that it's going to be respected and implemented if necessary?
Yeah. I think one of the first books I ever read on the subject of leadership, and that's still, I think, top 10 would be Dr. Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, one of the things he spends a lot of time describing is emotional bank accounts, right? And making deposits with people that we have relationships with, and then those withdrawals on occasion. Now, the withdrawals are oftentimes maybe a negative experience, or maybe they're just a time when I may have to make a decision quick and can't consult my team. But because I'm on a daily basis trying to make deposits, and they're making deposits into my account, then when we have those little glitches, when we have the challenges, when we don't agree on something, we have a foundation where we can work through it. And I found that that's really, really important. So I'm consciously thinking, sometimes I actually am telling myself, okay, I that was a withdrawal, and that wasn't the best me. And so I'm really grateful that I've been making deposits, and that leaves a relationship here that can be healed, that can be, that can be fixed, and that we can get through a tough moment, whether it's because of me or because of someone else. And we can maintain the trust that we've developed over time. So I don't think there's a quick fix to leading. I don't think there's a quick fix to trust in an organization. I think it's that daily making deposits into each other's bank accounts, so that there's that trust ongoing, and that strength that comes over time. The one other thing that I would say that's really important and that has been critical for us is, we've really together as a leadership team aligned on core values and our core purpose. And we've said these core values, these are principles. These are things that never, ever change. We will never change these. Every decision we make will be rooted in, does it align with core values? And if it does not, then we know the answer, and we're all committed to that up front. And the same thing with our core purpose. What are we focused on? What do we want to have happen? And if we start to stray from that, we can remind each other we're getting off course. And so that also builds this trust, and it builds this foundation of purpose and wholeness, I think, that we really need. And so, things get troubling, right? Things get difficult, and we might be tempted to make a choice that's not aligned with those things. And we can say, oh, we're not doing that. We're going to remember we're all in this together, and we've committed together. So we're going to stay focused that way.
That makes a lot of sense. So what are two things that you brought up that are really important, and for leaders listening, I want my clients that I'm coaching to listen to that, because I really love the idea of deposits and withdrawals, and just like in business, we want to have a positive balance, right? So
Absolutely.
The more deposits we make for that one time where we lose our temper, or we say something out of line, or that one time we make a hasty decision that's the wrong decision, you want to have enough deposits in there to cover that with that big withdrawal that you're going to make when you make a mistake, or you do something publicly that requires grace from your team.
But the important thing is that it's not it's not just I've made enough deposits, so get over it, right? That can't be the approach. It still has to be that that you have to acknowledge. You have to be vulnerable as a leader, and I think that's one of the hardest things. Thinking about this conversation, I think if you think about one of the lessons learned as a leader is that, and for me, I had to learn that I feel like early on that there's this expectation that I had to always be right, that I had to always know the answer, that I always had to be in charge, and that's not actually it at all. My job is to help other people do what they do best and be who they are naturally and support them in their work. That's my job, is to open the doors, right? To get things out of the way for people. I don't have to be right. I don't even have to be involved in most of the decisions on a daily basis. And, like, for example, one of the things that was really hard for me as I started to build a team in this business, we started 12 years ago. And for the first couple of years, if the phone rang, it was for me, or it was for Cola, my wife. We handled everything. And as I got that really good advice that, hey, you really need to find some who's to help you with accomplishing things, or you're going to be stuck and you'll never grow and you'll never get to where you want to be. And as I started to do that, then all of a sudden one day I realized the phone's ringing. Nobody's asking for me. And at first that felt a little bit like, well, but I own this company, and I'm the boss, and what's going on? People are calling and if I answer the phone occasionally, they'd say, oh, well, I need to speak to, somebody else that can really help me with this. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. So it took a change, a shift in my mentality about that. And now I love it. I love that nobody calls to ask for me, because there's so many other people who are better equipped to do what we're doing every day. And that's really, a leadership lesson for me, is that I don't have to touch everything. I don't have to be in charge. I just have to, as Simon Sinek says, take care of those who are in my charge. And that is what I love doing every day.
I will bet that probably 90% of the work I do with leaders when I'm working with a client that I'm coaching is helping them understand that other people can do things as they can, if not better, right? So whether it's a young entrepreneur or an older person who is new to entrepreneurship, finding those who's is so important. So great wisdom to share on your part. The other thing is I can see it just even in your demeanor, Adam. Your hair's not on fire. And and you've got a big business in 2 different states. How many facilities?
So we have 4 different office locations. We provide in-home care for older adults who live in their own homes. And so, a couple of hundred employees, and most of them are field-based, and they're out there. So all kinds of things could go wrong every day, and my hair used to be on fire all the time. And now whenever it starts to catch on fire, I just go, wait a minute. I've got a whole team, a leadership team, who can handle this stuff, and they're so much closer to it than me, and they do it so much better. So they prefer that I'm a layer away from much of the day-to-day chaos, because they're like, just calm down, boss. So we got this, and as I've learned to do that more, it's so much more help. Here's an example, Dan. So we have an operations software that manages our schedule, all of our client information, caregiver information, and that's where everything's managed on a day-to-day basis. And as a system, if it sends out some automated messages to our employees, they can respond to it, and sometimes they'll respond with the craziest things, and things that they shouldn't be responding with, things about, hey, oh yeah, by the way, I'm not going to work today, or different things, and all kinds of in the minutia. And I was receiving those messages, and then I would occasionally get involved, right, and respond, and then all of a sudden things would get escalated, become a bigger deal than it really needed to be. And finally, my director of client experience came into my office, and she said, I really wish you wouldn't do that, because it makes my job a whole lot harder, especially when I've already handled it, and then you chime in and you just create chaos and make it a mess. And I said, Darby, you're right. would you like me to just remove myself from those messages so I don't even get them? And she said, that would be really, really great. And so I said, okay, stand right there, watch me do it. I went into the system and I removed myself. And she said, thank you. And that was immediately a positive impact on how we operated every day. It changed my life, and it certainly changed hers and the rest of the teams, because I was no longer tempted to just get involved in things that was really none of my business.
Right. It's that spending that time in your genius zone. One of the things I do with clients, and Adam, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is I always say, look, we want to be spending 80% of our time doing things we love to do and that we're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you can spend 80% of your time doing that and only 10% of your time doing stuff you're not good at, but that you have to do, and then only 10% of your time on stuff that you don't love to do, but you're good at, and so you have to do it. That makes life a lot easier. You want to spend 0% of your time doing things you're not good at that you don't love to do. If you can and do that, and some of us have to, like when it was just you and Cola, there was a lot of stuff probably you did that you didn't love doing, you probably weren't very good at, but needed to get done. But now
we can. Yeah, we can do that, right? But you're absolutely right, and I think that's one of the principles that as in strategic coach, I'm part of Dan Sullivan's strategic coach world, and and that's one of the principles that he teaches is, you have to, as an entrepreneur and as a leader, as a founder, even as a manager, in another organization, everybody really has to find their unique ability, and start to leverage that. That's the superpower. If we spend all of our time, all of our energy on things that we either don't like or we're not good at, or worse, both, right? Then we'll never be able to have the leverage that we need to really succeed, propel ourselves, our businesses, and other people forward. So I think that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, you know what I'd like to hear? Tell me about how you've transformed as a leader, Adam. In the 12 years since you started this business, as you talked about earlier, your hair did used to be on fire. And to be able to take, when I talk to a leader that doesn't have time to do a podcast, I know that they're not operating at optimal, because you should be able to take an hour out of your day to do something that is not on the schedule, that isn't for just directly for the business. So what's that transformation been like for you?
Yeah, I think, the analogy that comes to mind is throughout my corporate career, as I look back, what I realized I was doing over that 15 or 20 years is frequently just armoring up, right? Putting on armor as I went, because I felt like every day I was going into battle. And oftentimes I think maybe more with myself than with others, but that battle to be confident, the battle to feel that I was making a difference, having an impact, the concern about, what if I lost my job? What would happen? Kind of living my life from a place of fear, really, rather than, having that faith and that courage to go forward. And at the time, I think I blamed others for that more. It's the company's fault, or it's my manager's fault. Really, it was me. The way I was functioning. And as I became an entrepreneur, started a business, and became a leader in a whole different way, I had to learn that I had to start taking those pieces of armor off. I had to be vulnerable. I had to be me. I had to admit to myself that I didn't know everything, that I didn't have to, and it would be okay. What's the worst that could happen if I'm wrong? As you would say, why not try this? Why not give myself an opportunity to become what I can become, and to help other people become what they can become? And so that transformation for me has been, and it's ongoing, right? Every stage of our business, every stage of the different things that we're doing requires a little bit of reinvention, a little bit of evolution from me. So I'm constantly working on that transformation, so that, because leadership's a journey, entrepreneurship's a journey. There's not just a finite endpoint. And so that's the most important thing I think I've learned, is that I have to constantly be learning, taking new understanding, applying things differently, uh, with every situation, every person, so that I can have the most impact, um, in other people's lives and for myself.
No, that's really good. Dan Sullivan likes to say, delegate everything except genius, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
find that zone of genius, and then find a way to help people pay you to develop it and become better at it. Where are you, when are you in your zone of genius, Adam?
So when I can, um, really think about, wonder, right? I like to wonder. I like to discern. If you bring in Pat Linciani's working genius, I'm a wonder and discernment on that front, and that
Sure.
fits really well with my make sense and my, and everything else that I understand about myself. And that's for me. If I got to have just a list of tasks to complete, oh my gosh, that's terrible. If I got to be in EOS terms, the integrator, where I'm making sure all operations happen today, um, I'm an angry integrator, because it zaps my energy. It
Right.
zaps my genius. And so, give me big problems, give me big opportunities. Let me brainstorm. Let me bring different resources together, right? I love, working in a team environment where I can just facilitate it.
Right.
People will say, "Oh, I hate meetings." I love meetings, but meetings with purpose, meetings where we've got a real issue with some meat on the bone, and we're trying to understand it and solve a problem, because I know if we solve that problem, it's going to propel us forward. And so that's what I love. I absolutely love that. And I've realized I need people, who can be my who to that how, right? If I have to figure out the how and then go get it executed, I'll never do it. But if I've got great people who can go, okay, I love this, let me go execute it and get the result, then we're just
Mhm.
jamming then and making progress like never before.
Thank you, and I love that you mentioned that, because your zone of genius is when you're in high level meetings where you're making big decisions and you're helping drive the not just the strategy but the vision. There's a reason you call yourself the chief vision officer instead of the CEO, chief executive officer, or the founder, which you are the owner. Why chief vision officer?
It's interesting because, I stole that from Simon Sinek, right? I think
Mhm.
it was an interview he was doing, and he said, I think we need fewer chief executive officers. He's like, what is that anyway, or something like that. And he said, we need more chief vision officers. And I went, you're absolutely right. And so I actually changed my title. I got new business cards. I put it on my email, not because it sounds cool or looks cool, but because it reminds me every day of my responsibility and this accountability that I have to my company and to my team to fill that role. And it reminds me to stay focused on vision and to stay focused on the big ideas and to not get in the weeds. And some days I don't succeed, but it's just sort of really an anchor point for me. So for me, it's not a status symbol. And I think a lot of people, they might put a title. Sometimes we have people in our organization that are focused on titles, and I don't really care about titles, but this one's important because it focuses me on who I need to keep becoming and what I need to keep delivering to my team. That's why I love it so much.
Yeah, and without that vision, the team doesn't know where to go, right?
Right,
You've
right.
got to set the direction. I made a video recently, and I was talking about it. Actually, I gave it at a talk. I was giving a keynote, and I said, "Look, when you're the leadership is not easy. You've got to be the most energetic person in the room. You've got to set the tone, and when things go wrong, you've got to be the one that stands up and says we can get through this, because everybody's attitude is dependent on yours."
Yeah, yeah. Dan, you remember in school, right? What were the hard classes? The hard classes were things like math and advanced statistics and
Right.
finance and all those things. And I got a master's degree in organizational behavior, and so and public administration, and those classes, those were hard. And I'm like, oh wow, this is hard stuff. And the classes I loved and enjoyed were the leadership, the organizational management. I'm like, oh, this is the easy stuff. Well, it's just flipped when you get out into the real world, right? Because you got computers and calculators and processes, and the other stuff becomes easy because you know how to do it. But leadership has to change and evolve every day. The people are different, the situations are different, you're changing, and you've got so much to manage there that's the hard part. And so for me, that's what I found, is that the leadership part, that's actually the hard part in the real world. In school, it's easy because you just read about it and think about it and talk about it. But go do it, that tests your mettle.
That is a great shift. I was blessed with being in the ROTC at the same time that I was in college. So leadership wasn't just a theory. We got to employ it, right? And we had to go and make it work. And you're either a leader or you're not. And if you didn't succeed as a leader, you didn't make it through ROTC.
Right.
It's interesting that you say that, because you're absolutely right. The classes that were hardest, that's easy. It's easy to calculate profit and losses and all that stuff. That's like you said, there's calculators, there's algorithms you can plug, but the people side of it, that's probably the hardest part. And if we pay more attention to that, that's fantastic. I love that insight. Let's talk about this before we run out of time. Tell us about your biggest why not moment, Adam. We're why not leadership. So we want to talk about a time in your life you said why not to something, and you're so glad you did.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I have to go back to, what one of the most important, again, is this choice to start a business. And when we got to that point, I remember it was the 4th of July, 2013, and we'd been investigating this opportunity. I'd been talking to my wife, and she wasn't quite convinced, but I kept feeling like I wanted to do this. And I was really at that point where it's go or no go. Like, am I going to do this, or am I just going to live in sort of that lameness of mediocrity that I'd been in, and I got up early that morning, and I went for a walk and spent some time kind of, meditating, thinking, praying for me was an important part. And I remember just the feeling, the sense I had, and it was almost those words. It was almost, why not? Like, what do you have to lose? If you don't do this, there's a lot you could lose. But if you go forward, the worst that could happen is it doesn't work, and then what came to my mind is, you've done so many things. You've really got a lifetime track record of things that you've done that you've never done before. You chose to do them. You learned, you found a way, you found people to teach you, to help you, and you succeeded, and here's the other thing about why I think this question of why not is important is, so often we think that the decision we're about to make is the end all be all of decisions. And it's usually not. Is it moving us in the right direction? Most of the times I've chosen to do something, it moves me in a direction, and it turns out that's not the end of it, right? That's not the ultimate place that I'm supposed to end up, but it opens a door for me so that I find another opportunity, another person, another skill, and it moves me yet another direction. But if I'd never taken the initial action, I would have never gotten there. And so clarity really doesn't come until we start taking action and moving forward. And that's how we make progress. So I think it's such an important question. Why not?
Hey, you brought something up, and I want to make sure we spend some time on it, Adam. You mentioned prayer, and I think I've been called recently. Just has so happened that I've been asked to talk on faith and leadership. What role? And I like this question, and I hope you feel comfortable answering.
Absolutely.
Because you mentioned you prayed before making that decision. What role has your faith played in your leadership development?
Yeah, I think so much. I mean, I think, faith is really, a principle of action, right? So
Yes.
if we talk about faith isn't something that is just obscure or ethereal, right? Faith is a principle of action. So if we really have faith, we have to move forward. We have to make a decision and take action. And then faith becomes a principle of power for us, because now we gain confidence, now we gain strength, and experience. And so, in my spiritual journey, it's been the same thing, that I've known that I needed to do something, and when I was willing to take a few steps forward, I think of it as an analogy once, that I heard, that I love, is, there's some light, kind of right around us, right? We can see just a few steps forward oftentimes in our lives, whether it's spiritually or in business. And in order to move ahead, we have to take a step or two into the darkness. And then the amazing thing that happens, and it's happened every single time in my life, is that the light follows. And then it lights the way, and we see a little bit further ahead. But if we go into life or business or leading, or a spiritual journey, thinking that we're going to have all the answers today, we're not. And we have to be willing to courageously step forward into the darkness, and then the light will follow, and we'll see more clarity, at least for the next part of the journey, and then we'll just continue.
Man, that is a great analogy. Step into the darkness and invite the light to
Yeah,
follow.
that's what we're doing.
The
Yeah,
light comes
absolutely.
with you, right?
Yeah.
But it takes courage. And
Mhm.
so you've been very courageous, Adam. And I love the leadership stories you've shared with us today. I would love to just, number one, let me thank you for being on, for being so open, and for sharing so much wisdom with us. I love the fact that not only are you, a CEO and a founder and a chief vision officer, but you're also a client. You are getting personal coaching and leadership coaching. What impact has that made for you? That's a big decision to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You're the boss. You're already at the top level of the company, so you're not getting coached so you can take over the next position. But you saw a need for coaching yourself. What's been the benefit of that for you?
Yeah, and I mean, I think, if you think about it, all people who are at the top of their game are only there because they're continually being coached. Tom Brady had a coach, right? Athletes, professionals, having somebody that can coach, can mentor, can challenge them, can help them see who they really are, what they can achieve. It's so important. And so, I really, this past year for me is when I realized that, I was hitting the ceiling of my own personal capacity, and I sensed that I had more capacity, I had more potential, but I was not going to be able to get there on my own. And so, that's why I chose uh, to become part of Strategic Coach. It's why I've really engaged more with with locally an EOS implementer to help me implement an operating system in my business. Something that, as I look at the EOS system, I'm like, wow, that's fairly straightforward and simple. And yet I knew I wasn't going to be able to get it done on my own without somebody holding me accountable and helping me do it. Um, and I also think that, I mean, like, for example, I mean, Genius Network, Joe Polish, and the work that he's doing is something I'm just becoming part of. I'm really excited for that, because, I need people to challenge me, to help me understand myself, to give myself the motivation and the support to achieve the potential that I really do have, and to be my best for other people, and to have that impact in other people's lives. And that's what I really am passionate about. And so, I felt like, personally, my personal accountability was that I needed to do that for not only myself, but for the other people that I have accountability and responsibility for.
That is a great way to end the show, Adam. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show and for sharing your, as I said, your wisdom and your stories with us. What do you say we end the show on that note?
Why not, Dan?
Thank you so much, Adam. It has been a pleasure getting to know you, getting to introduce you to our audience. Leaders, there was so much wisdom in this episode. I know that you're going to want to comment and let us know what you thought and share your stories. I mean, Adam did share some great transformation stories, some great vulnerable moments of what it took to make the decision to become an entrepreneur. Self-awareness to know that he needed a coach and to reach out and find those people that are out there, because it's not, Tom Brady's coach didn't have the talent that Tom Brady had, but he had the ability to help him be even better by giving him a perspective that he couldn't get besides stepping out of himself. So Adam, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you all for listening to the Lead Different podcast, and we'll bring you another guest next week. But for now, thank you, Adam Bliss. We look forward to having you on again, because there's a lot of questions we didn't get to ask, and we'd love to have you on maybe in a few months or a year from now and just get a refresh from you.
Thanks, Dan. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for having me on.
Everyone, we'll see you next week on the Lead Different podcast.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.